Welcome to Indian Army Chronicles, a channel dedicated to exploring the greatness of the Indian Army and keeping you updated on the latest defense news. In this inaugural episode, we'll take a deep dive into the rich history of our Indian Army. Our Indian Army has a legacy that stretches back to the days of British colonization. It's a legacy steeped in bravery and sacrifice, forged in the crucible of defending our sovereignty and participating in peacekeeping missions around the world. So let's embark on this journey together. One pivotal moment that deserves mention is the Sepoy Mutiny, which marked the first step towards our nation's independence. The Indian Army's revolt against the British colonial rulers sent shockwaves through Britain and played a crucial role in the eventual liberation of our country. During the era of British colonial rule, the Indian Army, often referred to as the British Indian Army, served as the principal military force in the British Indian Empire until 1947. Its primary duty was to defend British India and ensure the security of princely states, some of which maintained their own armed forces. As recorded in the Imperial Gazetteer of India, the British government undertook the responsibility of protecting these territories belonging to native princes from external threats and internal uprisings. This military establishment was organized not just for the defense of British India, but also for safeguarding all regions under the authority of the King Emperor. The Indian Army played a pivotal role within the broader context of the British Empire, both within India and globally, especially during the First and Second World Wars. Initially, the term Indian Army was informally used to collectively refer to the presidency armies, which consisted of the Bengal Army, Madras Army, and Bombay Army in the British Indian presidencies. This nomenclature gained official recognition after the Indian Rebellion. In 1895, the Government of India formally established the first official army known as the Indian Army, coexisting alongside the three well-established presidential armies. Subsequently, in 1903, these three armies were amalgamated. It's crucial to differentiate the Indian Army from the Army of India, 1903 to 1947, which encompassed both the Indian Army and British Army units stationed in India, and later underwent a division into the Indian Army and the Pakistan Army. The Indian Army traces its roots back to the period following the Indian Rebellion of 1857, when, in 1858, the British Crown took direct control of British India from the East India Company. Prior to this shift, the precursor units of the Indian Army were under the management of the East India Company and were financially supported through their profits. These units operated alongside British Army units that received funding from the British government. The three presidency armies, each having its own commander-in-chief, remained separate military forces until 1861, when officer resources were consolidated into the three presidential staff corps. Following the Second Afghan War, a commission of inquiry recommended the dissolution of these presidency armies. By 1895, these separate armies were disbanded, leading to the establishment of a unified Indian Army, which was organized into four commands: Bengal, Madras, including Burma, Bombay, encompassing Sindh, Quetta, and Aden, and the Punjab, covering the northwest frontier and the Punjab Frontier Force. This significant restructuring aimed to create a more centralized and effective military framework capable of addressing the various challenges faced by British India, including its participation in external operations like the Boxer Rebellion in China from 1899 to 1901. After the Indian Mutiny of 1857, which the British often referred to as the Sepoy Mutiny, control over the three armies previously overseen by the East India Company transitioned to the British Crown. This significant historical turning point led to a substantial shift in the recruitment approach for the Indian Army. In response to the mutiny, the British authorities adopted a strategy that focused on what they termed the martial races. These martial races were communities and ethnic groups believed to possess inherent qualities that made them exceptionally well-suited for military service under British command. Among the martial races identified were the Sikhs, Awans, Gaikars, Punjabi Musalmans, Baloch, Pashtuns, Marathas, Bunts, Nairs, Rajputs, Yadavs, Kumaonis, Gurkhas, Garhwalis, Janjwas, Maravars, Kalars, Valor, Dogras, Jats, Gurjar, Mahars, and Saints. Notably, the Gurkhas gained a reputation for their unwavering loyalty to the British and were known for their rare instances of rebellion. As for the Sikhs, who had previously been involved in the First and Second Anglo-Sikh Wars, The British Army became a substitute for their own Sikh Khalsa army. This change in recruitment practices marked a significant transformation in the composition of the Indian Army during that period, with a deliberate emphasis on specific communities and their perceived martial attributes. Since India became independent in 1947, it has been involved in a number of wars and conflicts. Some of the significant ones include the wars with Pakistan in 1947–48, 1965, and 1971, along with the Kargil War in 1999. Plus, there have been smaller clashes and border disputes over time. The primary operational areas for the Indian Army are concentrated in border regions, specifically Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, and Northeast India, where their primary focus lies in conducting counterinsurgency and anti-terrorism missions. Furthermore, they are actively engaged in patrolling responsibilities and executing anti-piracy missions along the coast of Somalia. In addition to these activities, the Indian Navy collaborates extensively with a range of nations, including Singapore, Brazil, South Africa, the United States, Japan, France, China, and Russia, participating in various joint exercises and forging partnerships. When it comes to financial allocations, India earmarked a substantial budget of $60 billion for defense and security during the fiscal year 2015–16. A considerable portion of this budget was allocated to support the defense services, with supplementary funds set aside for paramilitary and CRPF forces. However, the Indian military recently made a lot of progress from importer to exporter in arms industries. Stay tuned for more updates on how the modernization efforts are being done in next video. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the annals of our Indian Army's history. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories and updates on the modernization efforts of our armed forces. Together, let's celebrate and honor our Indian Army.